The Vikings feared one thing more than any storm or enemy fleet. They feared the man who said nothing when he should have spoken, the man who smiled with no reason to smile, the man who sat at the feast and watched, not because he was content, because he was calculating. They had a name for this in the Old Norse world, and every man who has ever been destroyed by someone he trusted has met it firsthand. He just did not have the word for it. Most men think the dangerous ones are loud. They are not. The loud man shows you everything. His anger tells you his limits, his boasting tells you his insecurities, and together they hand you a complete picture of what he is afraid of losing. He is readable, manageable. The dangerous silence is something else, the silence of someone who has decided you do not deserve to know what he is thinking. One is weakness, the other is control. The Havamal understood this before most cultures had written anything down. It named this silence not as absence, but as a form of power. Watch how men behave when they want something. They speed up and fill every pause, because silence feels like rejection, and rejection feels like losing. This is not a personality flaw. It is a mechanical response to pressure. When the outcome matters, the brain interprets quiet as danger and floods the gap with words. The problem is that every extra word is a data point, and the man sitting across from you, the one who is not speaking, is collecting all of it. Here is what the man who will betray you looks like early on. He is agreeable and never contradicts you directly, and when the conversation moves toward anything that actually matters, he goes quiet in a measured way, the kind that tells you he already has an opinion and has decided not to share it. Most men miss this. They read the agreement as loyalty and the silence as respect. It is neither. It is patience. There is a second version of this problem, and it lives inside you. Under pressure, most men default to reaction, answering a challenge immediately or rushing to fill someone else's silence with explanations no one asked for. The reactive man is not responding to the situation. He is responding to the discomfort of the situation. Every time you react before you have assessed, you hand the other person the advantage. Not because they are smarter, because they waited and you did not. The Havamal is not a philosophical text in the abstract sense. It is a manual, written for men navigating real environments where the wrong word at the wrong moment could end a life or a reputation. Stanza 6 states this without softening it. The wise man is cautious and silent when he comes as a guest. He listens. He watches. Before you speak or act, know the room. This is not passivity. This is the foundational tactical skill of every man who has survived long enough to be called dangerous. The men who lost everything, in the old world and in this one, shared one pattern. They spoke too soon, revealing the plan before it was finished, and the wound before knowing whether the other person could be trusted with it. Speed felt like decisiveness. It was exposure. The dangerous silence is not about being cold. It is the gap between stimulus and response that separates a man who is controlled from one who is controllable. You do not close that gap by practicing calm, but by understanding why you speak when silence would serve you better. The Havamal does not ask you to be calm. It asks you to be useful. Stanza 6 is the one most men know partially. The wise man goes silent at the feast and listens more than he speaks. Stanza 7 finishes the thought, the part rarely quoted. The wary man will find that few things go wrong for him. Few things, not nothing. The wary man still faces difficulty. He does not create it for himself by speaking without information worth speaking from. This is what the Norse tradition understood that most modern frameworks do not. Silence is not the absence of strategy. It is strategy. When you say nothing, you force the other person to reveal themselves. They fill the space, explaining and justifying until it gets uncomfortable. You learn. The Havamal frames this not as deception, but as observation. There is no instruction to lie, only the instruction to wait until you know enough to speak with accuracy. Old Norse calls this gapur, the reckless talker, one of the primary causes of a man's downfall, not weakness, just talking without intelligence behind it. There is also a warning inside the Havamal that gets ignored because it is harder to hear. Stanza 19 addresses the man who laughs at everything and insults freely. The text calls this ignorance, not rudeness. The man who cannot control what he projects cannot control what he gives away. The joke that lands wrong and the flash of anger that shows exactly where your limit is are both signal. In a world where alliances shifted overnight, handing opponents a map of your psychology was not confidence. It was a liability. What the Havamal is actually describing when it talks about the silent, observant man is not a personality type. It is a practice. The deliberate decision to separate information gathering from self-expression and to complete the first before beginning the second. This is what makes the silence dangerous, not the threat it implies. The quality of the decision that follows it. A man who has watched the room and understood the real question underneath the visible one speaks once and ends the conversation. The loud man speaks 5 times and never resolves anything. Volume is not force, precision is. The Havamal also distinguishes between the man who is silent because he has nothing to say and the man who is silent because he is choosing what to say. Stanza 29 describes a fool who thinks silence will cover his stupidity. It does not. Silence in a fool is still readable. It is nervous. It flinches when tested. This is the difference between learned stillness and empty stillness. One is rooted. One is hiding. The Havamal does not promise that practice will make you unreadable. It promises that practice will make you accurate, when to speak and what to leave out. The application is straightforward. Before you speak in any high-stakes moment, run one check, not an emotional check, a tactical one. What do you actually know about what the other person wants here? What do you know about what they have not said? If your answers are thin, you are not ready to speak. You are ready to listen. This is a behavioral rule you apply the same way every time. The Havamal does not say the wise man listens when calm. It says he listens. The condition is constant, whether you are angry or relaxed, threatened or comfortable. The second part of the practice is learning to sit in silence without performing calm. Most men, when they decide not to speak, still communicate discomfort through the body, shifted weight, a glance away. The other person reads all of it. Genuine stillness is not the absence of feeling. It is the decision not to broadcast it. Start in low-stakes moments, a conversation where you have something to say and choose not to say it yet, a moment where someone fills a pause and you let them finish before you respond. You are building the reflex, so when the stakes are real, the stillness is already there. The last piece is this. The dangerous silence only works if what follows it is worth the wait. If you stay quiet and then respond with the same noise everyone else produces, you have only delayed the problem. The silence has to be preparation for something specific, a question that cuts to the actual issue, or a decision that resolves instead of prolongs. That is what makes the man who speaks once more effective than the man who speaks constantly. Not the silence itself, the quality of thought that happened inside it. The Havamal valued the man whose words, when they came, meant something. The Norse tradition did not build dangerous men through rage. It built them through discipline over what they revealed. The man who controls his silence controls what others can use against him. That is the actual principle, not stillness as a virtue, control as a weapon. If this is the kind of framework you need, not inspiration, but an actual system for operating under pressure, there is more in this series. Link is in the description. One video will not change anything. A consistent practice will. That is what this series is built for.